COT data video for the week beginning the 29th of July. We just have to be aware of the data that we've got this week. So Wednesday is pretty huge because we've got the BOJ and then we've got the FOMC and Powell's press conference as well. So Wednesday is pretty massive. And we've also got the CPI from the Eurozone as well. And Thursday we've got the BOE. So that's really, really of note because I'm going to talk about the bubbles after this. And then we've got the NFP. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is pretty much roller coaster. Okay, so we come to the bubbles and we can see how the bubbles are orientated. So if anything's below 50%, it tells us that the herd are net short. Because they're short, it's bullish. Okay, and they're long CAD, New Zealand dollar, Aussie, and they've kind of held on to New Zealand dollar and Aussie for a while, and it's been up here for a good amount of time. And pound is currently strongest, then the Swiss franc, then the yen. So that's really of note because the yen's come down. Yen was up here and we've gravitated all the way down here. That movement there is signaling strength, okay? Because they were long and they reduced long. If they reduce long, they're going short. If they sell it, it's going to be a buy. We're below 50%. So, but we have to be aware of the proximity of the bubbles. And you probably wouldn't want to trade perhaps like the euro yen or the dollar yen or the pound Swiss or the pound yen. A better situation, a better scenario would be perhaps CAD pound or pound New Zealand dollar or yen, CAD yen or Kiwi yen, for example, like that. If you trade in like euro dollar, then it's going to be a little bit sideways. And we've come to the QB scores, and a really good no-go condition is when it says range. It says range, it just means technically we're probably going to go sideways, so you'd probably want to avoid. So Aussie USD, we're currently ranging, okay? And so if it says buy, you could look for buys. Theoretically, going by your technical chart, you wouldn't just simply enter a long position just because it says buy. You want to at least get things to align. And it's worth noting that the MSS change, it didn't change last week. So I think they're doing something with the website. What we do, this is a real-time import. And then we do a copy and paste macro. And there wasn't any change. So I think there must be something at the website end. They're just not updating their data. So we have to keep an eye on that. And it should update whenever the live data changes. Okay. So that's how we're situated. So we know how the bubbles are and what's a buy and what's a sell. Don't forget, if a bubble comes over here, it's confirmation of a sell. If a bubble comes here, it's confirmation of a buy. So they're short pound, but if they add short, it's going to make it more of a buy. Okay. And likewise, they're long New Zealand dollar. If they add long, it's going to make it a greater sell. So come to the COT data. The Euro FX has surged, but likewise, you could argue the dollar is fairly stable. It's just declined ever so slightly, but I'd say that was fairly sideways, to be fair. And the euro has pumped. Okay, so it's a little bit tricky because it made a sell, then a buy, then a sell, and then a buy. We may do a knee-jerk thing here. Don't forget, we've got the Powell speech and FOMC. So this may jerk down strongly. So, but currently, as it stands, it's made a buy over the USD. Okay, and this data is from Tuesday as well. Don't forget, this isn't from Friday. This is from Tuesday night. So there's obviously things that have happened since. Okay, and we were quite risk off the last couple of weeks. So it'd be interesting to see what Powell says about that. Let's add the yen. It's going to be a good press conference, I think. There's the yen, and we've really pumped. So that movement there coincides from that movement there. The yen was up here, and it's fallen because what's happened is that the herd has shorted the yen, and by selling it, they've made it a buy. So we come down here, and there's the banks buying it as the retail sell. All right, so that's the selling, so it makes it a buy. And the banks buy because they're buying. All right, so there's like the double support that may well hold. It should hold because of the bubble location. Depending that it remains a buy and we're below 50%, it's bullish. Okay, if it's above 50%, it's bearish. And so you can see how the COT data and the retail sentiment data, they work hand in hand. That was no coincidence from what we saw in the bubble. Right, the herd shorted yen as the banks bought. The banks are preying on the small fish. Right, so that's of note. So that's a really good example of the power of the sheet. Okay, so take. Oh, we'll keep that on. We'll take off euro. Aussie. Okay. I thought we may have continued higher, but it didn't like it up there. We were potentially going to make a Aussie USD buy when we had the crossover, but it was like, nope, we're not going to get the crossover. And we've actually come down quite strongly. Yeah, 8,800, 11,000. Yes, it's quite a knee-jerk reaction there, which I think might happen with the euro. I think we may have something like this, where it's like, no, not interested, boom. But we'll have to wait and see. So there's the Aussie, right? So that's of note. Note that the yen's ticking higher, the Aussie's come down. Aussie off, pound on. And that's fine because, you know, that they're buying, the herd is selling, they're short, and they added short to pound as well last week. Because of that, it made the price go higher. And you'll note that every time we go below 1.29, it gets bid. That's because of the retail sentiment and the COT data. Okay, so that's of note. So that's good. That reflects what we're seeing on the bubbles, which is cool. CAD on. CAD's been quite bearish. Oh, okay. So we've had a CAD yen crossover. So therefore, CAD is now weaker than the yen. Which we can, going back to the bubble, we can see CAD is weaker than the yen, so that's fine. That coincides, that respects the COT data. So there's the sell for CJ. Okay, I won't keep going back to the bubbles, but you can see how they work. Right, they're very, very powerful. Gold on. Okay, what is that level there? 274, 273. Ooh. Okay, that's really interesting. This is potentially going to be a resistance. 274, 273. Right, so we are actually hitting that resistance. So two ways of looking at it is that we could use that as support for a bounce, or we could use that as a resistance. Now, considering that we closed below that resistance, it could be a little bit bearish. Could be. But I do note that, you know, you'll be a little bit counter trend by selling gold because you can see how strong it is. But we have hit and closed below that resistance there, which came on the 3rd. This is old data. It's 2 years old. 2 years and 4 months old, that chart. So that's a very important level. So, and obviously we had that reaction off that resistance and we've fallen quite heavily. Yeah, 52,000 from 274,000. So it was a big decline on gold positions at that top. So we've got to be a little bit careful with gold. Okay, so that's of note. So that should be quite useful to be careful this week because we've got a lot of data as well. And the FOMC could be negative for gold potentially. New Zealand dollar, and we ticked lower, and so we made the NU sell because the New Zealand dollar is weaker than the USD. So there's the NU sell, and going back to the bubble, New Zealand dollar is weak, the USD is stronger than the New Zealand dollar, and then that's that setup there. Okay, so it's pretty cool, pretty useful. New Zealand dollar off, Swiss franc on, and then we'll wrap up the video. And then we just ticked higher slightly for 49,000 to 42,000. So I'll wrap up now. Enjoy your weekend. I'm going to be around if you need me. Don't worry about messaging me or anything like that. And don't forget, we've got a very big week ahead of us from Wednesday onwards. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is pretty huge. Okay, and I'm really looking forward to what Powell says as well. It should be a good press conference. There'll probably be a reporter asking about Donald Trump because if Trump becomes president, he'll get a new chairman of the Fed. So we'll have to see what Powell says. He'll say they don't deal with politics, but he will be thinking about his position. He may give like an indication about him leaving potentially if Donald Trump becomes president. And of course, we have a new Treasury Secretary as well as a Fed chair. So it's a big year in terms of US politics and also the financial world as well. If we get a new Treasury Secretary and a new chairman of the Fed, then it's going to be pretty huge. So see what if the question gets asked by a reporter, and then see what Powell says in response. I think he probably might not mind leaving his position because he's put in a good tenure, and it must be quite stressful as well. So we'll have to see what Powell says at the FOMC, and I wish you a good weekend.